The projector flickered across the boardroom wall as dozens of faces stared in disbelief. The numbers were red. All red. Billions in losses. Months of research had failed, and the tension in the room was sharp enough to slice through silence. "You're telling me after 9 months and $200 million, this is what you have?" The CEO's voice thundered. His name was Alexander Cross, the youngest billionaire tech mogul in the country, known for his ruthless perfection and merciless tongue. "I didn't build Crosstech to watch it crumble because my so-called geniuses can't fix a glitch." He slammed the tablet on the glass table. Engineers shifted uneasily. Analysts stared at their notes, afraid to breathe. "We're running out of time," murmured his CFO, a woman in her 50s with trembling hands. "If we don't stabilize the AI within the next 3 weeks, our investors will pull out." Alexander's eyes were ice. "Then maybe it's time to find people who can think beyond textbooks," he snapped, storming out. Outside the boardroom, the sound of his Italian shoes echoed against the marble floor. He pulled off his tie, frustration darkening his features. The entire project, the one meant to redefine global automation, was failing. Billions invested, teams across continents, and yet no one could fix a core algorithmic error that froze the system at random. He had thrown every expert, every consultant, every top graduate at it. Nothing worked. At the far end of the building, beyond the shining offices and glass walls, a girl mopped the floors. Her name was Maya. The janitor's cart creaked beside her as she scrubbed the hallway outside the innovation lab. She wasn't supposed to linger, but every time she passed that door, she heard fragments of conversation. Code problems, neural networks, logic loops. She listened, absorbing every word. Maya wasn't just a cleaner. She was a graduate of a small community college, brilliant but overlooked, unable to find a job because she didn't have the right connections or an elite background. Her mother worked in housekeeping, and when her father fell ill, she took over his shift. Still, she never stopped studying. Every night she read programming manuals, research papers, and watched tech lectures on an old laptop held together by tape. That evening, as she was wiping the door's glass panel, she overheard 2 engineers arguing. "It's not about the data size," one said. "It's about recursive interference in the predictive loop." No, the algorithm structure itself is corrupted," the other replied. Maya froze. Her mind connected the dots instinctively. Recursive interference, predictive loop. She'd read something similar in a paper just last week. Her heart pounded. She didn't mean to, but when the lab door opened, she whispered, "Maybe the AI's core isn't corrupted. Maybe it's misaligned with its own learning parameters." Both engineers turned, startled. One frowned. "Excuse me?" Maya froze, gripping the mop. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "What did you say?" She swallowed. I think it's not the algorithm that's wrong. It's the base condition. You could use a feedback isolation layer to prevent self-reference interference." The 2 men stared at her, confused. "You're the janitor." "Yes, sir," she said softly. He chuckled. "Look, we've got PhDs from Stanford and MIT working on this. I doubt a cleaner knows what a feedback isolation layer even means." "I do," she said, eyes steady. "It's from a 2021 paper on adaptive neural control systems by Dr. Liang. I read it last week." The silence stretched. The engineer blinked. "You read Liang's paper?" "Yes." Before they could respond, Alexander Cross appeared in the doorway. His voice was smooth but sharp. "What's going on here?" "Nothing, sir," one of the engineers said quickly. "Just a little interruption." Alexander's gaze fell on Maya. "You interrupted my team?" Maya's throat went dry. "I'm sorry, sir. I overheard something and decided to give professional advice," he said with a smirk. "That's bold." Her cheeks burned. "I didn't mean to offend anyone. I just thought." "You thought," he cut in, "that you, a janitor, could solve what my billion-dollar team couldn't?" The room was still. The engineers looked away. Maya's eyes lowered, but something in her voice didn't waver. Sometimes a different perspective sees what others don't. For a second, Alexander's amusement faltered. Then he laughed. A deep, rich, mocking laugh. "That's cute," he said. "You should write that on a motivational poster." He turned to his team. "If we ever run out of ideas, maybe we'll ask housekeeping." He walked away, his laughter echoing down the hall. Maya stood frozen, her chest tightening. Every eye in the lab was on her. Pity, annoyance, embarrassment. She turned, picked up her mop, and walked out before her tears fell. That night, while others slept, Maya couldn't. The humiliation replayed in her mind. The laughter. The dismissal. But beneath the sting, something else burned, defiance. She powered up her old laptop and opened her notes. She was wrong, fine. But if she was right, she'd prove it even if no one cared. By dawn, she had recreated a simulation of the company's AI model using open-source data. Her fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, her tired eyes locked on the code. The moment she ran her feedback isolation model, the system stabilized. Her pulse quickened. Then she ran a second test. Still stable. Then a third. It worked. It actually worked. The next morning, she printed her results and quietly slipped the report into an envelope labeled for Mr. Cross. She left it with the receptionist. As she walked back to the janitor's closet, she whispered under her breath, "Laugh all you want. Just read it." But Alexander Cross didn't read it. Not yet. He tossed the envelope aside with a pile of unfiltered proposals. It would take a looming disaster, and one shocking revelation, before he realized the janitor's daughter might be the only one capable of saving his empire. 3 days later, the chaos began. The AI system, codenamed Helios, was set to be demonstrated to a panel of global investors live from Crosstech's main auditorium. The event had been planned for months, cameras, press, and millions watching online. It was supposed to prove the company's dominance in artificial intelligence. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. The moment the system went live, the dashboard started glitching. Numbers flickered. The interface froze. One of the programmers tried to reboot it, but the error messages multiplied like wildfire. Lines of red text filled the main screen. System recursion failure detected. Gasps rippled across the room. Alexander's jaw tightened as the investors whispered among themselves. "What's going on?" he hissed at his lead engineer. I don't know, sir. It wasn't supposed to." "Fix it." Alexander barked, his voice echoing through the mic system. The lead engineer's hands trembled over the keyboard. The AI refused to respond. Instead, it looped itself into a cascade failure, replaying the same commands in endless recursion. In less than 5 minutes, the demonstration crashed completely. The main monitor went black. Silence. Then flashes from cameras. Reporters scribbling. Investors shaking their heads. Someone in the front row muttered, "They're finished." Alexander stood frozen, fury pulsing through his veins. "Shut it down. Now." As his team scrambled, the investors filed out quietly. His PR manager whispered, "Sir, social media's already picking it up." Alexander ripped off his mic and stormed off stage. His bodyguards cleared a path as he headed straight to the upper office. The board members were waiting, faces pale, eyes anxious. "We told you not to launch it yet," one of them said. "And you told me it was ready?" Alexander snapped. 200 engineers, $1 billion budget, and no one caught a basic recursion error? The CTO spoke softly, "It wasn't basic, sir. The system's learning model corrupted its own source logic. No one's seen something like this before." Alexander slammed his fist on the table. "Then find someone who can fix it." He paced the room, anger twisting into desperation. He thought of the last 6 months, the sleepless nights, the media pressure, the investors' demands. He'd built Crosstech on the idea that innovation could outthink humanity. Now humanity, or its pride, had betrayed him. Later that evening, long after the offices emptied, he sat alone in his glass-walled suite, staring at the city lights. The reports lay scattered across his desk. Every graph showed decline. His phone buzzed with messages from journalists demanding answers. He rubbed his temples, then noticed the pile of unopened proposals his assistant had left earlier. Out of frustration, he grabbed the stack, intending to shred them all, when one envelope slipped free and fell open on the floor. The label caught his eye. For Mr. Cross. The handwriting was neat, careful. He frowned, flipping it open. Inside was a printed simulation, and notes written in the margins. The handwriting was feminine, precise. He scanned the first page and froze. The proposal outlined a feedback isolation layer, a solution eerily similar to the exact recursion problem that had just crippled Helios. His pulse quickened. "Who wrote this?" he muttered. He flipped the last page, and his eyes widened at the name, Maya Osei Janitorial Services. He stared at it for a long time, disbelief mixing with embarrassment. The janitor? The same girl he'd mocked days ago? He sat back, rubbing his chin. Coincidence? Maybe. But her analysis wasn't amateur. She referenced research papers and model logic only experts knew. He buzzed his assistant. "Find someone named Maya Osei from Janitorial Services. Now." Moments later, she appeared in the hallway outside his office, still wearing her cleaning uniform, clutching her gloves nervously. The contrast between them couldn't have been sharper. His custom Italian suit, her faded blue overalls. Alexander leaned against his desk, arms folded. "So you wrote this?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "And you somehow knew how to solve a recursive loop that none of my engineers could?" "I studied the architecture from what I heard," she said. "I recreated a smaller version at home and tested a stabilizing layer." "You tested it?" "Yes, sir. 3 times. It worked each time." He studied her face, searching for any hint of arrogance or deceit. There was none, only nervous sincerity. He scoffed, half amused, half intrigued. "You expect me to believe that my billion-dollar AI crashed because we didn't listen to our janitor?" Maya hesitated. "No, sir. I expect you to believe that ideas don't care where they come from." That silence between them was electric. Alexander exhaled slowly, staring at her with something like reluctant respect. "Fine. You get one chance. I want you to show my chief engineers exactly what you did. If it fails, you're done here. If it works," he paused, "you'll get credit. That's all." She nodded, trying to steady her shaking hands. "Thank you, sir." The next morning she walked into the innovation lab, the same room she'd been laughed out of days earlier. Now dozens of engineers gathered around her, whispering. The lead developer crossed his arms. "So the janitor's running the show now?" he muttered under his breath. Maya ignored him. She stepped to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and began sketching her design. Equations filled the board, elegant, logical, precise. At first the room was quiet. Then one of the younger engineers whispered, "She's right. The isolation layer could neutralize recursive memory interference." "Run her code," Alexander ordered, stepping into the lab. The team loaded her model into the system. Maya stood still, heart hammering in her chest. The simulation began. The graphs flickered, then stabilized. 1 minute passed. 2, 3. The AI's core held steady. "Impossible," the CTO breathed. Alexander stared at the screen, then at Maya. "Run a full sequence." They ran it. The system performed flawlessly. For the first time in months, no crash, no glitch, no failure. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth, trying not to cry. Alexander didn't speak for a long time. Finally he turned to his team. "Document everything she just did. Implement it into the mainframe by morning." As the engineers rushed to work, he looked back at her. "You just saved this company," he said quietly. "But I don't understand, why did you even bother after how I treated you?" Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "Because I didn't want to be right out of pride. I wanted to be right for the truth." For the first time in years, Alexander Cross felt something foreign, humility. He nodded slowly. "You've earned more than credit, Maya. You've earned a place here." By the next morning the office buzzed with electric whispers. News had leaked. Someone inside had recorded the test. The video of a janitor fixing the billion-dollar AI spread across every tech forum overnight. "Crosstech's miracle fix by a cleaner," read the trending headline. It was all over Twitter, Reddit, and business networks before sunrise. Maya had no idea until she arrived for her shift. Her phone vibrated non-stop with notifications she didn't understand. The moment she stepped into the building, the stares began, some admiring, some mocking. A few smiled kindly, but most just whispered behind her back. When she reached the lab, the CTO called her in. "Maya, the press is all over this," he said, his tone strained. "You weren't supposed to talk to anyone about the fix." "I didn't," she said quickly. "I haven't told anyone." He sighed. "Then someone in this lab must have leaked it." Before she could respond, Alexander walked in, his expression unreadable. The room fell silent. "I've seen the footage," he said. His eyes met hers. "You didn't record it, did you?" "No, sir." He nodded once. "Good. Because right now we're walking a very thin line. The investors are calling this a miracle, but the board sees it as an embarrassment, that a janitor did what their elite team couldn't." Maya's chest tightened. "I didn't mean to embarrass anyone." He exhaled. "You didn't? They embarrassed themselves. But politics doesn't care about fairness." As the day unfolded, the tension in the company sharpened. Some engineers refused to speak to her. A few openly mocked her presence. She overheard one whisper, "She thinks she's a genius now." Another murmured, "If she was so smart, she wouldn't be cleaning floors." She kept her head down, working quietly in the corner of the lab, rechecking the system stability logs. But deep down she felt a strange ache, the loneliness that comes with being right in the wrong world. That evening, Alexander called her to his office. When she entered, she saw 2 board members waiting. One of them, a tall man with silver hair, looked her up and down with distaste. "So you're the girl?" he said coldly. "Yes, sir." He turned to Alexander. "You can't be serious about keeping her here. This company runs on reputation. Imagine what the public will think, our billion-dollar AI fixed by housekeeping." Alexander's voice was calm but firm. "They'll think we value results over titles." The man scoffed. "Investors don't think that way. We can't let a cleaner become the face of innovation here." Maya's fingers curled at her side. "With respect, sir, I'm not asking to be the face of anything. I just wanted to help." "Help?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've helped embarrass an entire division. Do you know how much this scandal has cost us in credibility?" Alexander's expression darkened. "That's enough." "Alexander," the man said, lowering his tone, "you need to handle this quietly. Let her go. We'll compensate her well." For a long moment Alexander said nothing. His gaze drifted to Maya. She looked small, nervous, but resolute. Her eyes held something the others lacked: conviction, not ambition. Finally he spoke. "If you think firing the only person who actually fixed our system will restore our credibility, then you're in the wrong company." The board members' eyes flashed. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Alexander said. "But I'll regret it more if I keep pretending hierarchy matters more than truth." They left in silence, the door slamming behind them. Maya let out a shaky breath. "You didn't have to do that for me." Alexander smiled faintly. "You didn't have to fix a billion-dollar disaster for me either." For the first time she laughed softly, the tension melting for a moment. But he could see the sadness beneath her smile. "Tell me something," he said. "When you figured it out, why didn't you go to another company? Someone else might have listened." Her eyes softened. "Because Crosstech was the company that inspired me to start learning. I used to watch your interviews. You said once that genius can come from anywhere. I believe that." He looked down, guilt tightening his chest. "And yet, when genius came from the janitor's wing, I laughed." She hesitated, then said gently, "Maybe you just forgot what you once believed." The words stung because they were true. Alexander Cross, the visionary who once defied tradition, had become the very kind of man he used to challenge. That night he didn't go home. He sat in his office long after everyone left, watching the city below, each light a reminder of ambition, competition, and dreams. He thought of Maya, working quietly with determination no paycheck could buy. Something in him shifted. The next morning, Crosstech's PR department was in chaos. Reporters were camping outside. Headlines screamed, "Janitor outsmarts billion-dollar engineers." The board demanded damage control. One member suggested publicly discrediting Maya's role to restore order. Alexander walked into the meeting room mid-argument. "No one's discrediting her," he said flatly. "Alexander, be realistic," one snapped. "This could ruin our image." "Then maybe our image deserves to be ruined," he replied. The room fell silent. He leaned forward, voice low. "We built Crosstech on the idea that intelligence has no boundaries. That's what investors bought into. If we bury this, we betray our own brand." They had no answer. An hour later he called a press conference. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to the podium. Reporters murmured, expecting excuses. Instead he said, "Last week our system crashed. We failed. But one of our own, someone this company overlooked, found the answer." He paused, scanning the crowd. "Her name is Maya Osei. She's not a PhD or an executive. She works in maintenance. But she saw what none of us could. And for that, Crosstech owes her everything." The room exploded in questions. Maya, standing at the back, covered her face in disbelief as people turned their cameras toward her. By the time the conference ended, the internet had already crowned her a hero. #MayaTheFix trended across the globe. Emails flooded her inbox. Universities wanted to honor her. Tech companies offered her positions. But fame brought new enemies too. Inside Crosstech, not everyone celebrated. A few senior engineers began plotting ways to undermine her work, to prove her fix was luck, not genius. Maya didn't know it yet, but the storm she'd survived was only the beginning. "Perfect? Continuing your Dynasty Tales cinematic story?" He laughed at the poor girl's idea, until she solved what his billion-dollar team couldn't. The applause from the press conference had barely faded before the knives came out. In the weeks that followed, Maya's name echoed through every tech outlet. Interviews, articles, even documentaries wanted her story. But inside Crosstech, admiration curdled into resentment. Some of the engineers who once mocked her now saw her as a threat. Their leader, Dr. Reese Lennox, the senior systems architect, took it personally. He had led the failed AI project for months. Now the girl he'd laughed at had made him look incompetent. "She's not a genius," Reese muttered to his colleagues in the lab one night. "She got lucky. Her fix wasn't scalable, it was a fluke. We'll prove it." They began secretly altering lines of the core code, small changes subtle enough to corrupt the system but not enough to leave traces. Within days the AI began acting strange again. Tasks that once took seconds now lagged. Predictive outputs fluctuated wildly. The board noticed first. "Is her fix already failing?" one of them asked in a tense meeting. Alexander frowned. "It shouldn't be. I reviewed it myself." "Then maybe you were blinded by pity," the silver-haired board member sneered. "We warned you about mixing emotion with business." Alexander ignored him, but unease stirred in his chest. He summoned Maya. When she arrived, she carried a notebook full of her logs and observations. "Something's wrong with the new updates," she said before he could speak. "The system behavior isn't consistent with the isolation model I built. Someone's tampered with it." He looked at her, startled. "Are you sure?" "I checked the logs. There are time-stamped commits from the last 48 hours that don't match the authorized patch list." He swore under his breath. "Find them. I'll handle the rest." But before she could start, Reese intercepted her in the lab. "Looking for someone to blame, genius?" he said with a smirk. Maya met his gaze calmly. "You altered the code." He laughed. "Prove it." "I already did. The commit trail leads straight to your terminal." His smirk faltered. "No one will believe you. You're just the janitor who got lucky once." That hit her hard, but not enough to silence her. She turned and walked straight to Alexander's office. Before she could even explain, the alarms went off. The AI core was crashing again. Within minutes, chaos engulfed the headquarters. Screens flickered red across the building. The new product demo scheduled for investors that morning froze midstream. Reporters waiting outside caught wind of it instantly. "Cross-tech failure, miracle fix backfires." Alexander stormed into the lab, fury radiating off him. "What happened?" Reese stepped forward. "Her patch destabilized the system just like I said it would. I told you we shouldn't trust untested code from an amateur." Maya tried to speak. "That's not true, someone altered it." Alexander's voice boomed. "Enough. Everyone out. Now." The room cleared, leaving only him and Maya. He looked at her, betrayal in his eyes. "You promised me this was solid." "It was," she said softly, tears threatening. "Someone sabotaged it." "Do you have proof?" She hesitated. "Not yet." "Then I can't defend you." The words hit her harder than any insult ever had. For a moment she just stood there, trembling. Then she whispered, "I risked everything for this company. I didn't do this." He turned away, jaw tight. "Go home, Maya." She left the building in silence, her heart splintering. Outside, the reporters swarmed her, shouting questions. She didn't answer a single one. That night, she sat by her small apartment window, staring at the city that once represented dreams. Now it only reflected disappointment. But Maya wasn't one to break easily. She replayed every log, every timestamp, every data string in her mind. At midnight, her eyes widened. A pattern, tiny, deliberate insertions in the core code designed to mimic her isolation layer but break under certain triggers. She cross-referenced system backups and traced the changes to one name, Reese Lennox. At dawn, she returned to the office. Security almost stopped her, but she showed her staff badge and marched straight to the main lab. Reese was there, smirking. "You shouldn't be here," he said. She ignored him and plugged in a drive. "Let's settle it right now." Within seconds, the lab screens lit up with her recorded proof, video logs, system trails, commit timestamps, and IP traces leading to his terminal. The room fell silent as Alexander entered behind her. He looked at the data, then at Reese. "Is this true?" Reese paled. "She doctored it." Alexander's voice dropped, cold and deadly. "Security. Escort him out." As guards moved in, Reese lunged toward Maya. "You think this changes anything?" "You'll never belong here," he spat. Alexander stepped between them, voice low but firm. "She already does." When the doors shut behind the disgraced architect, Alexander turned to Maya. "You could have left this alone. After what happened, you had every right." She met his eyes. "I didn't want right. I wanted truth." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You've done more for this company than anyone in it. You saved Crosstech twice." She smiled faintly. "Maybe next time you'll listen sooner." He chuckled softly. You have no idea how much I deserve that. Later that week he called another press conference. This time he didn't stand alone. Maya stood beside him, her posture calm but proud. Cameras flashed. He began, 3 weeks ago, a girl most of us overlooked saved this company. Yesterday she saved it again, from those who couldn't stand the truth. He paused, turning toward her. Maya Osei will no longer clean floors here. She'll lead them. Effective immediately, she's joining Crosstech's AI research division as a full engineer. The crowd erupted in applause. Maya's hands shook as she blinked back tears. She whispered, "Thank you, sir." He smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself, for believing when no one else did." After the conference, as they stood overlooking the skyline, Alexander said quietly, "You changed the way I see everything. I used to think success meant being the smartest person in the room. But you proved it means being humble enough to listen." Maya looked at him, the city lights glimmering in her eyes. "Then I guess we both learned something." He nodded slowly. "You reminded me why I started this company in the first place, to give ideas a voice no matter who speaks them." They stood there in silence, two unlikely allies bound by one truth: brilliance has no rank. And somewhere deep inside Crosstech's data servers, the AI they built together ran flawlessly, stable, strong, and unbroken, just like the girl who saved it. And that was today's story. He laughed at the poor girl's idea, until she solved what his billion-dollar team couldn't. I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Type your country or city in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit like if this story inspired you, subscribe if you love stories about power, pride, and unexpected brilliance, and tap that bell icon so you don't miss our next episode on Dynasty Tales.